So good to see everybody. Hope everybody is well. A Rosh Chodesh Tov, a good Chodesh, in the waiting hours of Rosh Chodesh Menachem of the beginning of the 9 days, these days of introspection, days in the week before Tisha B'Av. It's so great to see everybody tonight around our Shabbos table for this very meaningful evening of conversation, some good cheer, some good time, some good fun, and hopefully some meaning and inspiration for us all. Let me begin tonight by thanking our very dearest friends, Jerry and Shelley, the Abramsons, for generously sponsoring tonight's Around Our Shabbos table to commemorate the second yahrzeit of Jerry's beloved mother, Miriam Bas Yisrael HaKohen. Miriam Abramson, her neshama should have an aliyah, and we thank you for your sponsorship and all the inspiration and all the Torah and all of the achdus that is felt tonight and subsequent. It should be an aliyah's neshama for her. And I have zero doubt, literally no doubt, not beli shum safek, that she has tremendous nachas from you, Jerry, and from your beautiful family and all that you do for Klal Yisrael, for the Jewish people, for Am Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael, for Klal Yisrael, for the Boca Jewish Center. And we just deeply appreciate you and thank you for your generous
Thank you. I just want to add something. My mother's yahrzeit is today, Rosh Chodesh. Wow. My mother was a Bas Kohen.
Right.
Today's Aaron Kohen's yahrzeit.
Wow.
My mother's name was Miriam.
Oh my, I have chills.
Wow.
Wow, beautiful.
And as they say, the apple does not fall too far from the tree. So all of that who was Aaron, who was Miriam, these are the progenitors of the Jewish people and the leadership and the manhigim of Klal Yisrael, that Aaron was an Ohev Shalom. He was a Ohevis Habrios, and Mekarvan L'Torah, as the Mishnah Perkei Avos says, and that is you. That is literally you and Shelley, who are Ohev Yisrael, who are Mekarvan L'Torah, who just live your life, the embodiment of that in such a beautiful way. So, wow, that's very powerful. Bas Kohen, Aaron HaKohen's yahrzeit, Miriam, Bas Kohen, unbelievable. So, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And
if I can add, Miriam, I think of all the women in the Torah, and especially during these parshas, we for sure were able to see and learn that Miriam was really responsible for getting us to where we are today. She was the force. She was the strength. When the men were not strong enough, Miriam convinced the women to be strong. It wasn't anything negative. I'm just pointing it out that the name Miriam carries with it a lot of strength and a lot of emunah, and it's that emunah and strength that saved the Jewish people in the hardest of times. So hopefully we can gain from the koach of Miriam Bas Kohen tonight and get through this difficult time as well. Linda's liking that.
I think she likes the strength of the women comment.
I know.
She loves
I
that.
know.
Hey, Chef Mayer, how are you? Wow, my screen literally became one of extreme sunshine right there. Boom, right like that. Okay, Jen, take us away.
Okay. So happy to see faces.
It's Ruth's birthday today.
Whoa, hey, Ruth.
1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday,
Ruthie. Happy birthday to you. Many more in good health. Ad mea v'esrim shana. Gesundheit. Is that a okay?
Hello.
Good to see everybody. Okay, so the star of our show, the host of our show, the leader of our Shabbos table, it's wonderful. Rebbetzin Jennifer, take it away. Lead us, guide us, inspire us, question us.
I want to see little Sarala. Maybe at the end. It's okay at the end. So, okay. We have an exciting new parsha, new sefer that we are going to be starting this Shabbos, Sefer Devarim. And we've had a lot of chazak moments in our home, finishing all these Sifrei Torah. So we start Parshas Devarim this week, and what happens in the Sefer of Devarim is that Moshe Rabbeinu reviews with the Jewish people everything that has happened between them leaving Mitzrayim, them leaving Egypt, and leading up to the present moment and everything that happened in between. And in this week's parsha, hi Shali, in this week's parsha, one of the things he reminds them of and he talks about is the sin of the Meraglim. And it's a lot of question as to how he describes the sin of Meraglim in this week's parsha, which is different than it is described in the original parsha where the sin of Meraglim takes place. And what is questionable about this week's parsha is that it almost seems as if this time around Moshe is being blamed a little bit for the sin of the Meraglim. So my question this evening for our Mora Asra is, when a nation sins or a people transgress, who is at fault? Is it the people or is it their leader? That is the question of this week's parsha, because originally in Parshas Shlach, it seems as if Bnei Yisrael were at fault. And in this week's parsha, it hints to maybe Moshe being at fault a little bit in his leadership. So I think it's a very relevant question, because we struggle today knowing who is our leader as a Jewish people, as a nation, as Americans. Leadership is very much in question now. So I think it's very appropriate. What takes a good leader?
Good leader has to listen to their wife. That's a good leader. That's what they got to do. Yes. Right, Linda? That's for sure. So it's a very important question. It's a very necessary question for us to focus on, and it's true. I think that, in the annals of history, leadership is something that we've, studied. Moshe Rabbeinu in the Parsha is describing the people as being too heavy to carry, and the burden for which, it seemed to be too difficult, and his petitioning to the Almighty that I can't carry these people alone. They're very difficult. And you see there's this yin and the yang, and there's the give and take, there's the back and the forth, and the blaming and the posturing and the jostling and so on and so forth.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
You can interrupt the whole night. The whole night. Let's make a general rule here.
Should we take a vote? Like, raise your hand who thinks it's the people who are responsible for the sin, and raise your hand if it's the leader who's responsible for the sin. What do you think?
I think whatever you decide is fabulous.
Okay. Raise your hand if you think.
Mayor, you have to unmute yourself. Wait,
let me first ask it that everyone can raise at the same time. Raise your hand if you think it's the fault of the people. People. Me too. I'm going with people. Wow, you're going with leader. Raise your hand if you're going with it's the leader's fault. Hold on, you can't not vote.
Okay, so I vote.
Leader?
Wait, there's a third.
Third option.
There's a third option. I didn't want to go with the third option because that's like too easy.
I want to talk to you.
Okay, talk to us,
tell
Mayor.
Chef Mayor.
I think that the people make the leader, and the leader makes the people.
Oh,
we can stop now. That was perfect.
It's true.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
It's true.
Hi, Sarah.
It's true because there's a relationship that exists between the community and its leadership, its rabbinate. There's a relationship between the people, right? That's what you're saying, the players and the coach. There's something that's, just like lahavdil, a husband and wife, a man and a woman are brought together and they make each other, they build each other, help each other grow, find each other's potential, find out the best of what's in each of them. There's something about them. There's the contemplating the essence of who they are. There's the ezer, there's the kenegdo, there's the together, there's the separate, there's the machlokas, and there's the achdus. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I think that there's a lot there, and there's a lot to this. And I think that there's a lot of history and a lot of necessity to discuss this, especially now when anybody is either scrolling in their news and they're reading all the rhetoric and the monstrous rhetoric that goes on in just pundits, whatever your favorite news station is, your network is. there's posturing, jostling, manipulating, conniving, and trying to discover the truth somewhere in between all of that, right? I mean, I think that goes without saying. And we don't really know what that means. Who's in charge and who's making policies and who's our leadership and what's our leadership and does leadership change and how does that work? So let me just begin with Mark. Yeah, want to jump in there?
He wants to add a
Third
option.
The third option is both are responsible for this.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
The leader primarily, the people in many cases as enablers of a leader who clearly is off the path.
Right. So let's begin. When I think this conversation, I think where it's very timely and very appropriate to where we find ourselves in. Let's begin with the Gemara. Chazal tell us that any generation that did not participate in the building of the Beis HaMikdash, in the rebuilding of the temple, is obligated, is responsible as if they, in that generation, destroyed it. And I say that Gemara very slowly because it's a frightening Gemara. Because really what in essence that means is that everybody in the generation that doesn't see the Beis HaMikdash to be rebuilt, there's something that's flawed about that generation, obviously. We have a directive, a command, a calling to find national purpose, singular purpose, but national purpose. And part of what national purpose is, part of what national purpose is to be able to fulfill the promise of Binyan Beis HaMikdash, and Yishuv Eretz Yisrael obviously is part of the national narrative. And every nation, every generation that does not rebuild the Beis HaMikdash is chayiv as if they didn't build. What that means is that there's someone that takes responsibility for the actions that don't happen, or in the converse of the action that does happen. So you take responsibility for something that happens or something that doesn't happen, whether you like it or not. And sometimes I think what happens is, and this is like a very important preliminary, is it's very important to understand the context of this whole who's to blame and whose responsibility and whose fault is it. Because part of what we understand is that it seems from the Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies going into Eretz Yisrael that Jennifer refers to, it's that inference in that instance, but it's also Moshe Rabbeinu blames the people for his inability to go into Eretz Yisrael, right? That's what he says. He says, I'm not going into Eretz Yisrael because of you. Now we know that that's not true. He's not going to Eretz Yisrael because the incident of Mei Meriva, what happens at the incident of the rock, speaking to the rock, striking the rock, so it's because of you. So there's this yin and the yang, there's this give and take, there's this back and forth that you're to blame and I'm to blame and we're all to blame and we're pointing fingers, and it seems to be that we're nowhere. And that, in the backdrop of that, is that any generation that doesn't build the Beis HaMikdash is obligated. It's that there's something about the leadership or the generation, the people, that have to look themselves in the face and to take responsibility, like utter ownership of the situation that's around them. It's very easy for me to say that, okay, it's not my political party, it's not my particular stance, it's not my theology, it's not my religious belief, it's not my particular socioeconomic group. So therefore, I've expunged myself, I've excused myself, I've made, a caricature for which I've, made a whole host of just different reasons why I am not to be held responsible. When the answer is, at the end of the day, true leadership, first and foremost, takes responsibility, rides the highs even when you don't have a role in a high, and rides the lows even when you don't have a role in the low, because you take ultimate responsibility for the Jewish people, for what your task is, for what your role is, for what your responsibility is. And I'll tell you a couple examples. The first example is I got a phone call from somebody about 10 days ago. And this person was very, very upset. They were upset at an incident that took place in shul on Purim. And they called to tell me that they were very upset about this incident that took place with a person in shul on Purim. And I said, to be honest with you, I didn't really even know or notice what it is that the complaint is. And I'm not going to really share because I know this is something that gets shared publicly and I won't want anybody to feel, God forbid, embarrassed. But it was something that was a very great piece of minutia, very small, actual, identifiable, at least to me. And then ultimately what happened was it was recognizable as something very large to somebody else. And I was told that this person was very deeply offended and very hurt. Now, you have to remember, the person who was the quote perpetrator had no idea, even though he was accused of having the idea, although there's no chance that he had an idea of what it was when he left his house. And at the end of the day, what was this person calling to tell me? Is that, Rabbi, you're responsible for this. I didn't even know about it. I didn't know the people involved. I didn't know what the backstory was, right? You're responsible. And it gave me a little bit of pause as the conversation was happening. And I was thinking to myself, like, I have two choices, I have two paths. Path number one is to fight tooth and nail. I didn't know. I excused myself. It's not my thing. And what are you talking about? And of course, I defended the integrity of the persons involved, and I, tried to assuage and placate, the indictment as it was. But at the end of the day, I decided to take which I did that in part. But at the end of the day, what I decided to do is to take the leadership role responsibility, which was, I said, listen, while you're inside my Dalet Amos, once you're inside my sanctuary, when you're under the umbrella of the Boca Jewish Center, you're with me. And I take responsibility, and I apologize you had that type of experience, because the experience, it was not a pleasant experience for you. Now, what that means is, whether that was necessary or unnecessary, I know that person felt very happy, very satisfied, very placated, and fulfilled. Was that necessary? Don't know. But there's something about, there are other examples. Take for example, great successes that a shul can have, a community can have, an institution can have. It could be that as the titular head of any organization, so you're making big decisions top heavy, but like the granular heavy lifting that happens to make a flyer and to make the phone calls and to order the food and to set the table and to get the speaker. So there's a lot of other people are doing. So who gets celebrated? The rabbi, the leadership. They might have done, a minimal amount of it, because that's kind of like what leadership is. You ride the highs, you ride the lows, you take responsibility because it's your ship and it's your captainship. And at the end of the day, there are certain criteria that are necessary to really help figure the algorithm of who really ultimately is responsible. But I think that that's very important. We see that that's not just true in the halls of Moshe Rabbeinu and shuls and rabbonim. You see that in sports, right? You could have a sports team, for example. As a kid, I used to be very frustrated with this. You have a sports team where you could have a championship basketball coach, football coach, baseball coach, and they could lead a team to a national championship, a World Series year after year. What happens that when there's a rebuild in that particular franchise, or that year the team doesn't make the playoffs? So the manager, he's going to sit in the dugout, or the coach is going to sit on the bench. He's going to wear a suit. He's going to look all nice and tucked in. He's going to be, lead the press conferences. He's not going to put one moment of time on the court, on the hardwood. He's not going to play in the diamond in baseball. He's not going to be on the gridiron at all. Not one moment of play. He's going to literally be on the sidelines completely. He's not going to have one moment of play time. And yet, he's going to be the first guy fired. He's going to get the axe. He's going to take the fall. For whether or not the team is either successful or not, he's going to be rewarded with a multi-million-dollar contract, never spending a moment, taking a snap as the quarterback, or he's going to be fired because his team, they played under 500 baseball, and therefore they didn't make the playoffs. Is that fair? The answer is it is, because at the end of the day, the team is led by, is inspired by, is roadmapped by, is led by the leader of the team. And at the end of the day, there is a responsibility that is necessary for a person, to take when you take that responsibility, and you have to ride it. And it's not always easy, and it's not always fun. It's not always enjoyable. It's sometimes very lonely. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that, you are working for the Ribbono Shalom. And when you work for the Ribbono Shalom, when you work for Hashem, so there's no greater satisfaction and there's no greater responsibility. And that responsibility comes with something that's unique. But I do want to qualify this. And this qualifying happens in the following example that I think makes a big difference, because I'm sharing like broad strokes here, generalities, right? Not specific nuances. But what I am going to tell you is that there was a conversation that I had with somebody today. And I think this conversation that I had with somebody today, and I think, Linda, maybe you've alluded to some of this in the past previous conversations a little bit as well, which I think also make a demarcation, a distinction ultimately. And by the way, I say as a preliminary, as a hakdama, this is probably very debatable what I'm about to say, but we're around the Shabbos table, so let's make it fun. And that's this. The conversation is that there was a young woman, an engaged young woman, who was having a conversation with me and her bridegroom, her chatan, and they're having a conversation about the affiliation she has previous, an affiliation that she has previous with a synagogue not of Orthodox denomination. Let me say it that way, a little bit more Loshen Saginar, a little bit nicer. Not with the Orthodox organization. And she was telling me about a Torah class that she went to. And the Torah class that she went to, the rabbi was giving a whole shtickle Torah, I say that tongue-in-cheek, giving a ganza musar shmus about how cheeseburgers today are permissible. it's permissible to eat a cheeseburger because the archaic rabbonim of the Gemara, of the Torah Shebaal Peh, had a whole this, and that's what they did that, and they went this, and she said she was just so unbelievably, utterly confused, and that on, even on a fast day, and even on Yom Kippur, that this rabbi will eat, not just eat, but he'll eat a cheeseburger, maybe even a bacon double cheeseburger. I was like, my eyes were like popping out of my head. It's one thing not to do it, but then it's another thing to say that it's archaic and it's not relevant and it's not true and that's not how you're supposed to follow Torah Hashem. And so there's something about a captain of the ship who's espousing things that are neged Torah versus somebody who is espousing Chamishe Chumshe Torah, Shas and Poskim, teaching halacha kedin, kedas v'kedin, and doing everything that they can. At the end of the day, of course, the leadership has to take responsibility. But there has to be a thirsty, drinking congregation of people who are interested, who are anxious, who are prepared to accept. Just because a person chooses that they don't want to follow the 613 mitzvahs, that doesn't make it the rabbi's fault. That's not what it is. It's not somebody else's fault. It's the person's fault. That said, there's a difference between a leadership that's espousing emes and a leadership that's not espousing emes, that's espousing sheker. Now, that doesn't mean that such a person who's telling emes and sheker, truth and falsehood. What that doesn't mean, though, is that a leadership that is telling congregants, parishioners, members of their congregation, that they can eat cheeseburgers and eat so even on Yom Kippur, for example, that they're not going to be held responsible. Like, I obviously believe that they are going to be held responsible. But here's the other thing, and here's the ardent truth. The ardent truth of all of this is that today there's a plethora of information available. It's not like, when the printing press was new, when there weren't books that were available, when there wasn't the opportunity for have transliteration or translation. Today, the ability to have literacy, and I don't mean literacy literally by reading and writing, but the ability to be Jewishly literate, to know dates, to know reasons, to know, expressions, and to know how to converse and to understand law, it's available. You go to Chabad.org, you go to YU Torah, you're able to go to a whole host of not only websites, Safari, you literally have the entire gamut of Hebrew literature. The ability for a person to discover the truth, to uncover the truth, and to remedy the falsehoods of that which is being espoused in certain denominations, that's a responsibility that other people, everybody has. Every person has not only that right, that obligation, but also that mandate.
So that was going to lead me to my next question. What do you think does the job better? A good leader that maybe doesn't have good followers, or good followers that create a good leader? Which do you think?
What was the first one? The first one is?
Can a good leader pull off being a good leader even if he doesn't have an inspired following? Or which one is more crucial to success? Followers or leaders?
Right. So I think that they're both necessary. I think they're both necessary. And I would just say, I'll give you two primary examples. I mean, they're great. They're great debate points. They're fabulous Shabbos table, conversation points. Why? Because I think, oh, look at that beauty. So what are the? Oh
my gosh.
What are the?
Kobe.
I'll give you two perfect examples. Two good examples. One example, everybody here perhaps has heard of Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. Rabbi Moshe Weinberger from Eish Kodesh in Woodmere. So, I know him and I've learned with him in intimate, close study quarters. I know, Alan, you have, coming from that neck of the woods, I know you have knowledge of who he is and what, right? So I've had the privilege of learning with him. Jen listens to his shiurim regularly. Yeah. So he's an extraordinary person. And the people that are members of his community would say what I'm telling you, which is he's a man that has literally inspired his congregation in a way that was described and is described as unprecedented. People that, lived a certain way, never grew up a certain way, never identified with a certain type of inspired Jewish living. And that doesn't mean that they're not modern Orthodox, because the definition of modern Orthodox ultimately, I think, altruistically, live in the modern world, be successful in science, mathematics, medicine and career, law and business, do all of that and do all of that well. But don't have that be that it bifurcates your responsibilities religiously, Jewishly, communally. And what Rabbi Weinberger has done, he has infused this extraordinary amount of spirituality into the bloodstream of his congregants, to the extent that they themselves are like on fire. You walk into Eish Kodesh, the name of the synagogue is like so appropriate. Eish Kodesh, the fire that's holy. You're on fire there. You daven mincha there. You feel like you're at the kotel. You sit with the Rebbe for a few minutes. It's unbelievable. He has an incredible, palpable.
But can he do that with, let's say, any congregation?
Right. So I'll say this is like very intimate. We would share this at our Shabbos. So I'm happy to do this here as well. Even this is going to go live. I was at the beginning of the year. I was a part of a super mega small rabbinic cohort that went to study with Rabbi Weinberger, myself, a few of the other rabbis from Boca Raton went for a few days, and that question was actually asked to him. When you have a small group of members of your community who are thirsty, who are interested in what you have to share, and you have a whole host of other shuls theoretically that you could go to, right? You have the shul that you go to, and the other shuls that if you don't like what's happening in that shul, you can go to the other shuls. So is it possible to imagine that he'd be able to go to the middle of anywhere and really do the same thing? And the answer to his question was very humbly, and with tremendous humility, he said, he thought yes. Why? And I think this is the key. Not because he believes in Moshe Weinberger, because he believes in the Torah. He believes in the authenticity and the truth of the Torah, and he teaches the truth of the Torah. And therefore, people crave the truth. People have their soul, their neshama, the pintele yid, the desire that every person has, whether they know it initially and ultimately then come to it. They ultimately arrive at it because everybody wants that. What people detest is false. What they detest is anything that's antithetical to truth. And therefore, what he believes is it's not Moshe Weinberger it's a dynamic speaker, even though he is. It's not Moshe Weinberger that's warm and loving, which he is. It's not Moshe Weinberger that's chassidish and embracing, that he is. It's that he talks authenticity, and people like that, and they're moved by that.
The only problem is that as much as people detest falsehood, they also, I think, detest uncertainty, and they detest, not knowing what the future brings, and they detest, having someone make decisions for them. So I think that sometimes even a person who wants authenticity, I think the fragility of life makes them lose sight of what is authentic, because they want what they want, and they want to feel secure, and they want to feel, people sometimes are hesitant to feel even the truth of the Torah, that Hashem runs the world, because they want to know, but why is this happening? And why is that happening? And what's going to be with tomorrow? And so they almost, I think, especially like times like we're in right now, they push away the truth because they need control somehow.
Right. Nobody likes to feel vulnerable. I think that's the key word. Like feeling vulnerable, making yourself vulnerable to what's the reality, what will be the reality if this is in fact true, if this is a lifestyle that I should adopt, if what you're saying is what I should do. Like being vulnerable and experiencing or facing the unknown or the mystery is very, not only scary, but very unsettling. And when a person's able to find peace with being close to God and putting your trust in the Almighty, because as we've all seen, there's so much in life that's uncertain. And the only difference between now and pre-corona is that maybe we're a little bit more aware of how uncertain it is, right? Before coronavirus happened, the world wasn't, any more uncertain, but we thought things were more certain, but it's not that way. Like sunrise, sunset, things could be and things can't be, like in a flash. Just like it came is as quick as it can go, and as quick as it wasn't is as quick as it was. So it's the idea of being vulnerable. But that's point number one, is in the question that you asked, which is great, is it the leader that uplifts the disciples, or the disciples, the students, the congregants that uplift? And of course it's a partnership. Of course it goes hand in hand. As Meir likes to famously tell me, what does the Gemara tell us famously? The Chazal tell us from Mikol Talmidai, that mimer? He's Kalti. From all of my students have I learned. So the Gemara describes the great Tana who says that the greatest, it's from my teachers that I learned, from my chavrusas I learned more, but from my disciples I learned the most. Because any really good leader is able to grow, is raised, matures, develops, along with the people that they're growing with. Like I owe personally huge, indescribable amounts of gratitude and debt of thanks to my congregation, to my shul, for helping grow me. Because over the past 12 plus years, I came here, Radine, and Linda, like Bill, like really wet behind the ears. There's rookie and there's like AAA ball, right? I came in as like AAA. I came as a rookie and
brown beard.
Brown beard, a little more hair. Yeah, a little more hair. Exactly. And you make mistakes. You don't know what all it's all about. And you grow up a lot. You see things, you learn things, you make mistakes of things you say, the things you should have said, when you're in rabbinical school, you think you're just going to get up and give like a Kol Nidre drasha, like tell a Rabbi Pesach Krohn story and make everybody cry, and like you're going to, like, I don't know, be on the cover of Mishpacha magazine or something like that, and like be on JM in the AM the next morning. No, it doesn't work like that. They're unhappy,
No.
I won't even call it happy. There are challenging moments. There are defining moments. As I told somebody today, on the other side of challenge is success. When you're challenged and you're tested, on the other side of that is success. And I owe tremendous gratitude. I mean, I'm utterly in debt to my community that's helped raise me and still raises me, and I'm still growing. I'm excited for the next 10, 15 years. Hopefully we should all be able to merit being in Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael in good health, and everyone should be healthy and well. Is that in these number of years that we'll be together, in 20 years and 50 years and 100 years, that we're going to grow and we're going to be able to be better at what we do, and even better and more scholarly and more learned and more sensitive and more empathetic and more community focused. I mean, the day we feel like we've reached that place should be our last day on the job. That's what I believe. And the day that you're able to can still continue to see yourself as a growing organism is a day that you can keep fire and going, and that's what it is.
So, but how do you lead people to thirst for the right thing?
So I think good question. Firstly, you need an awesome Rebbetzin, which of course we have. Like, I'm the luckiest guy on the whole planet. Number one.
Feed them some good cholent.
Yes, honey cakes never hurt. Honey cakes rock and roll. I think that there's two things. Number one is you got to teach truth. You got to teach truth. You got to teach truth passionately. You have to be empathetic. You have to really teach Moshe emes v'taraso emes. Emes. People crave truth, and this is what it is. And we have our sages, we have our Masorah, we have our tradition, we have Chamishei Chumshei Torah, we have the Shulchan Aruch, we have the Torah Baal Peh, we have the beautiful teachings of Mamari Chazal. That's the truth. But here's something else, and I could not say it better than Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs said it, as he said it best, because there is nobody who can say it like Rabbi Sachs. He says, you know what the greatness of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and Jerry, this is for you.
Yeah, I have a quote by him. I'm scared you stole it.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
If I stole it?
No, you didn't. Now I feel.
Then I'll be punished. Jerry, this is for you. L'zecher Nishmas, your mother. Thank you again for sponsoring tonight's beautiful around the Shabbos table. Rabbi Sachs, Lord Sachs, says it this way. You know what the greatness of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is? Is that there's some people, some leaders that have followers. And then there's some leaders that have leaders. Very big difference. You could be like the Rebbe of all Rebbes and have a Hasidic dynasty of tens of thousands of Hasidim who will amply follow you and come with kfitelach and they'll ask for brachas and they'll respect and admire you, etc., etc. You can have, that's one thing called Hasidim, there's followers, and you can have a lot of followers. The mile of the greatness, of course, the Lubavitch Hasidim have tons of followers, but says Jonathan Sachs, what the Lubavitcher Rebbe was able to do, and this is huge right here, this is huge, is that he wasn't able just only to have followers. He made those followers into leaders. V'horaya, the proof of that is, there isn't one state in the United States of America that doesn't have a Chabad Shaliach. You want to go to South Dakota for vacation? Good, go for it. You want to go to Gainesville for vacation for college? Gesundheit hate. You want to go anywhere in the world that you want to go, anywhere in the world, but certainly in the continental United States, there's Chabad. Why? Because these disciples, and now you have to realize it's the second generation and the third generation, they all want to be like emissaries of the Lubavitcher Rebbe for whom they never met, but they did.
However, I think that the only way they were able to become such successful leaders is because they followed their Rebbe tight. Those Lubavitchers, they don't deviate. They are the followers and the Hasidim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and they just took that and transformed it into becoming good leaders. And that's actually my quote by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs that I found for this tonight's Around the Shabbos table. He asks, why is Yehoshua the next leader after Moshe Rabbeinu? You have Pinchas from a few weeks ago who showed great leadership, and you had a lot of brave other candidates. Why Yehoshua? So Rabbi Sachs says that Yehoshua, he epitomized a good follower. He was the loyal servant of Moshe Rabbeinu throughout the entire time from when he's introduced until the very end. He was the humble and the learning follower of Moshe Rabbeinu. And so this, I could end with this, or I can just say this now, but I wrote this down. This is from Rabbi Sachs also. He says, I believe that followership, is that a word? Or did he create that word?
If you say it with a British accent,
right,
anything could be a word.
He says, I believe that the followership is the great neglected art. He says, followers and leaders form a partnership of mutual challenge and respect. To be a follower in Judaism is not to be submissive, uncritical, blindly accepting. Questioning and arguing are a part of the relationship. And too often, though, we decry a lack of leadership when we are really suffering from a lack of followership. I think it's a good word. We should maybe make it a word. Wow. Followership, I think that's exactly what you're saying. The Lubavitcher Rebbe is a perfect example because he had a group of people who were good followers. And I think that, yes, Mark, it's both, that we need to be good followers and good leaders. But he's saying that there's a neglected art of followers. And I think that you see that more even today. No, you see neglect in both areas, but when you have like mobs that are, attacking things or even attacking a leader, like in the Parsha, the mob approached Moshe Rabbeinu, we want to send spies to Israel. It almost takes away the power of the leader, because how can you direct a mob who's completely lost sight of perspective, and they're not working based on their intellect, they're based on their emotions and their fears, like we were saying. I think the fears sometimes overpower the authentic truth. So I think that is a big lesson that we need to take from this week's Parsha, is to be a people that know how to follow. And I think that's lacking, no?
I am following you always. I think for sure. I love that quote, very powerful and beautifully said, wonderfully said, in the House of Commons. I think it's very powerful, and I think there's a lot there. One of the great skills of either, be it the Lubavitcher Rebbe or any great leader, really, I think maybe this is maybe his greatest accolade, maybe the greatest accolade of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, not just that he created, not just followers, but leaders. But how did he do that? Like, how did he do that? How does that happen? So I would think that part of how that happens is that when you see somebody, when you learn with somebody, and you study with somebody, and you look into the eyes, into the heart. They say that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I was privileged to meet him. Maybe some of you had or see him live. They said that he had these very blue, piercing eyes. And those eyes would like pierce right into the soul, into the heart, into the neshama of a person. Something about good leadership, and maybe even his good leadership, is the ability to be able to see the leader in the person, even the leader in the person that person doesn't see themselves. That person's able to perceive greatness in somebody else. When you see somebody else is great, and you perceive what even they themselves don't know that they have, that they can become great, you know what happens? They become great. You're able to become great. If you ever read Rabbi Ken Spiro's book, World Perfect, The Jewish Impact on Civilization, everybody ever read that book? He was there with us a few years ago. Fabulous. So he talks about, you ever wonder why we are called the people of the book? We're called the people of the book, right? Why are we called the people of the book? So he has a whole section where he describes the popes of antiquity specifically kept their language, their literature, their theology away from the books, away from the subjects. And the reason why they did that is to keep them illiterate, because if you keep people illiterate and you keep them unsuccessful, they're not able to challenge the leadership. They don't know anything. There's the us and there's the them. There's the we and there's the they. There's the knowing and then there's the unintelligent. And that was the difference between them and the Jewish people of antiquity and us, which is why we're referred to as the people of the book. The people of the book we're faithful to the Torah. We're faithful to the book. We want there to be literacy. We want you to grow. We want you to far surpass. You don't want your child to be as good as you, right? You want your child, your descendants, your grandchildren to be far greater. You want them to far surpass you, right? Isn't that what we want? We're not threatened by that. We're not vulnerable by that. We're excited about that. We're exuberant with that. We celebrate that in the greatest of possible way. And I think that not only is it great leadership, not only is the idea of followership, but there's also the idea of realizing the potential in other people, helping people have the belief in themselves that they really are great, that you really can unlock your own greatness. And I think that if you really look, whether it's at your spouse or your children or your grandchildren, your friends, your community, you're really so terrific. You're really great. I think that really answers what I think is ultimately the greatest challenge of our day right now where we find ourselves. You know, what's the greatest challenge right now? We're mourning the Beis HaMikdash. We want the temple so bad. I mean, let's get real. How do you mourn something that you don't even know what it was? And there were sacrifices. It seems like there was a lot of blood. There was a lot of chaos. I mean, everyone wants that. I mean, what's happening there? What do we mourn? You can't really want something bad enough until you really know what it is. What are we mourning? I'll tell you one thing that I think we're mourning. Why was the temple destroyed? The temple was destroyed. One reason the Gemara tells us because there was baseless hatred. There was sinas chinam, the Gemara in Yevamos. There was Gemara in Yuma. There was sinas chinam. There was baseless, clueless, causeless hatred. So what that means is, part of what we're mourning is that there's still sinas chinam, that there's still baseless hatred, that there still isn't achdus, that we just can't see good in other people. We can't just without cause and without reason just say, you know something? I think you're great. I think you're unbelievable. What I think you can become is unbelievable. I see in you something that you yourself don't even see in yourself. And I think that that's the greatest responsibility of a rabbi, of a leader, of any institutional head, is to cajole the participants. And I think that, I know there's some here that could weigh in on this very heavily. Probably all of you would have something very interesting to say about this. I've often felt, I'm curious what you think about this. I've often felt that there's a change in language that might even be different and distinct, that might even move the Jewish narrative along a little faster. There's a difference between, let's just say you want to become a member at LA Fitness, right? You got to pay dues, you become a member. There's membership, right? But I believe there's a difference between membership and partnership. When you're a partner in something, I would be daring to suggest that instead of calling our membership, let's call it partnership. You know why? Because when you're a partner and you're in the partnership, you're in it. You're invested. When you're a member somewhere, excuse me, sir, but there were no cups in the water cooler. Excuse me, but the toilet paper was a little scratchy. But the treadmill was a little sweaty. You feel entitled. That's right. You feel privileged because I'm a member. When you're a partner, you pick up the trash off the floor. When you're a partner, you make sure that the air ducts are clean. When you're a partner, there's got to be security for the Yom Noraim. When you're a partner, you make sure that everything happens the way it happens. Dare I suggest that there shouldn't be membership. There's partnership. And that's all about what your Rebbe did. That's what great leadership does. You're a partner. It's not me and you in separate rankings and tiering. Of course, there's leadership and rabbis and
membership implies what are my benefits.
Right. And partnership implies what are our goals and what are we doing? Let's make this platform the greatest, most unbelievable platform possible. I want to be a partner, right? Esha Torah has the Partners Conference every single year. Partners Conference. We're partners in this. It's unbelievable. We're partners in the story of the Jewish people. We're partners in the story of our community. We're partners in the story of our families. We have to take achrayus and take responsibility. And so when leaders and communities can work in that cohesive, bonded, learning, student, teacher, growing, discipline, my goodness, the sky is the limit. It's not a function of how many members you have. It's how many partners do you have in the efforts that are going to move this story forward. And then at the end of the day, our goal is one, and that's the same. And that is, we want to rebuild our Beis HaMikdash. We want there to be ahavas chinam. We want there to be causeless love and harmony. Not that we're all going to see things the same. I spoke to somebody this afternoon. We didn't agree on almost every single part of that conversation. The difference between agreeing, or I should say disagreeing and being disagreeable. We could disagree theology, politically, religiously, but so what? So what that you vote this way and I vote that way? So what that your leaning is this way and that way? Who cares? At the end of the day, we were all created, B'Tselem Elokim Nivra es ha'adam, that God created us in his image. And by goodness, if we would only agree to appreciate at the very basic, at the basis, at the soul, at the heart of this, at the pneumius of this, is that we are one neshama, we are one soul, bond intrinsically, intricately together as one, with one story, with one narrative, with one purpose, with one directive. So then I think that we would just be in a different place. And I think we'll be able to find the place we really want to be. There won't be mourning during these days.
Right.
There will be celebration, and there will be joy, and there will be simcha.
I think that's exactly the message of the 3 weeks. You know, Hashem is always trying to remind us, you know, who do you trust? And we're so distracted by all of our different, you know, what our needs are and what are our incentives and what are our benefits. And we forget to constantly put our trust in Hashem. And during this time, we're again thrown into the situation where we have to question, who is it that we trust today? We're in the 3 weeks. That's the question of the 3 weeks. Where is Hashem in your life? And I think that that's one of the things that people don't realize when we talk about the times of Mashiach. Everybody wants all the problems to go away, and we want Mashiach to come to get all the problems away. I read in an article in the Mishpacha that people don't realize one of the main things that happens once Mashiach comes, and that brings us full circle in this conversation, is that Mashiach restores proper leadership and has a central authority for the Jewish people. And that's, you know, what is something major that we're missing today, both in the fact that we don't want to follow a leader and that we don't have that one voice that is leading us all to the proper perspective of trusting in Hashem. And that's what we're really lacking today. And we have to really take this time, especially now we're at the end of the 3 weeks, to, you know, refocus and recalibrate and ask ourselves, who's at the center of our lives? Is our own needs, our own perspectives, or is Hashem in the center? And we're trying to live, you know, with that proper thirst that you described, the thirst of truth, and not the thirst for control and power and, you know, recognition, but the real truth for the real thirst for truth. I think that's what we have to gain perspective in this time of the 3 weeks and the 9 days, and this week's Parsha, starting a new chapter and starting a new Sefer Devarim, and reminding ourselves what takes us away. If you think about the Meraglim, what was their problem? That's how we started this conversation. They were allowed to send spies to come back and report to them about the beautiful qualities of Eretz Yisrael, but their thirst for Eretz Yisrael got pushed away, and their thirst for security is what ended up being what they were searching for. They were nervous about the war, and they were nervous about who lives there, and they were all of their human nerves, and they lost their focus, and they lost perspective of what their goals were going into Eretz Yisrael. And so now today we have to really gain perspective and recalibrate.
100%. Okay, 100%. Oh my goodness. Hello. Zahava, good to see you from Eretz Yisrael. Unbelievable. Wow. So let's end with that. Rebbetzin, and I've got one question for you. Give me one. We're thinking about Israel. We're thinking about Yerushalayim. We're thinking about the Holy Land. We're thinking about these days of introspection and wanting. Give me one Israel story. One fun Israel story. One only in Israel does that happen.
Okay.
Comes to mind.
Okay. First thing that comes to mind is when I was in my year in Israel. I was on one of those big, giant accordion Egged buses that like stretches on and on and on. And it was towards the end of the day, and we were not a lot of people left on the bus. And there was an old lady getting off the bus, and the Egged driver pulled over to the side of the road, and he opens the door for this lady to get off, and all of a sudden he gets off the bus too. The Egged bus driver gets off the bus, and we're like, where's our driver going? Like, is this it? Like, we have to just walk home now?
Did you take the wheel?
He walked off and helped the lady get off the bus, crossed her across the street, and then got back and drove the bus away. And that was an only in Israel moment. Only in Israel would an Egged bus driver have a heart of gold and make sure that the lady gets across the street. Oh, I want to be back in Israel with the Beis HaMikdash.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, anybody have an only in Israel story that you want to share with us? Only happened
How
to
did we get to only in Israel?
just a nice little fun only in Israel. Thinking about Israel. You can always do an only in Israel story. Did we have an only in Israel story?
How about you?
So maybe a topic for next week.
What? That could be our topic next week.
You guys remember when I told the story just a couple of weeks ago after
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
remember I told you after Shimshi was born.
Right.
After Shimshi was born,
famous
my
story.
Yerushalmi, I got whistled in the middle of Rehov Strauss right outside of Bikur Cholim Hospital. Woo! Because we just had a baby, and Jennifer looks at me and she wants an iced coffee and a bagel, a double bagel with tuna and what? Yeah. So I had to go on a mission. I had to go, and I was just absent-minded, just had a baby, and this police officer, Mishtara, whistles me over, pulls me over, makes me stand in the middle. I'm about to get a ticket for jaywalking. She says, "What are you doing, jaywalking?" I said, "I just had a baby boy." She says, "Mazel tov, why are you not telling me this?" Meanwhile, everybody's honking and honking. She's saying, "Sheket, vakasha, sheket, yesh lanu ben, yesh lanu ben, yesh lanu," and everyone's honking, "Mazel tov," and "Mazel tov." So I said, everybody can come to the Shalom Zachar and the bris. And that's my only Israel story.
Okay.
All right. And the moment we've all been waiting for. Everybody say hello.
Megan.
Come to say hello.
Hi, Shia. How are you?
Where's Babela?
Hello. They're all poking in. Oh, look how good. Look at the baby.
Oh, Maishala.
Hi. How come he's not sleeping?
Oh, he's not sleeping.
Moshe ate today. Moshe ate today.
He eats today.
For the first time.
Banana
What
and
did he? What did he eat? What did he eat?
banana and squash and grapes.
Wow.
Wow.
And which was his favorite out of all those three?
Squash.
Yes,
Was it?
butternut squash. That was his favorite, right, Moshe? Right? Moshe is 6 months old.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
poo, poo, poo. Moshe, we gotta do shush. Shush, baby.
And after the 9 days, he'll have baby lamb chops.
We're running. We're running for the baby lamb chops. Where did Sarala go? And where did Kobe go?
We're back.
So nice to see everyone. What? Unmute yourself. You're muted, Zahava. Moshe, say hi to everybody.
I love those pictures, Jen. They were gorgeous.
Yes.
I made one.
You did. You.
Why Shia?
For Shia.
Shia,
Shia.
you.
There you
You are the best baker of muffins.
He's not Shia's this week,
You are
huh?
excellent muffins. They're beautiful.
We miss you too. Oh my goodness.
We miss everybody.
I know. We
I
really
miss you guys. I miss my Friday visit.
You know, Avi Warman's trying to get everyone to send in pictures of the family so we can all see each other in the newsletter. So send in your pictures. It would be so nice to see everybody. Spread the word. I want to see Pearl. Is she sleeping? Pearl doesn't go to sleep this early.
Oh,
Oh,
First she does.
She does. Wow. Amazing. Good girl.
Yissy, what you been up to? Yissy, did you feed Moshe?
Did you help feed him butternut squash? He sure
Oh.
did.
You're the best helper.
Yeah.
Best helper.
What'd you do today? Who gave you a painting class today?
Yitzi had a painting class.
Who gave you a painting class?
I am.
Wow. You're
I'm
so
the arts and crafts teacher today, and he taught them. What did you paint?
The house.
What did you paint?
He painted his
A
brother.
sunset.
a what?
A sunset.
That's it.
Wow.
Maybe next
Very-
week we'll show it to you. Right now it's drying.
Very impressive. That you're
Oh, we have
showing
one. We have one coming in.
Oh, we have a
We have
sunset.
Yitzi's sunset.
Mine.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Excellent.
That's terrific.
What? You
Yeah.
want to tell them how you did it? No.
No,
Isn't that amazing?
that's amazing.
All by himself. with good leadership.
Oh, that's it.
Good followership. It was also very good followership. Okay, everybody. So good to see
Beautiful.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Jerry, for your
Shalom,
generous
shalom.
sponsorship of this fabulous conversation. L'zeich nishmosa. We wish everybody a holy, happy, special, spirited, lively Shabbos.
And we miss you, Radina and Bill. It's so nice to see your faces.
Miss you too. Good Shabbos, everybody. Great to see everybody.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Good Shabbos. Happy birthday, Ruth.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Many more in good health. Take care, everybody. Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Shabbos.